The orbital platform Artemis 7 floated in the velvet dark of space, a glimmering ring of solar arrays at Lagrange Point 2. From its vantage, Earth appeared as a great marble of white and blue, while the far side revealed the infinite scatter of galaxies. For Captain Daniel Reeves, who had spent 3 years aboard this station, the sight never grew dull, until the moment it disappeared. At 3:12 Universal Time, every panel, every diode, every filament of the station blinked out. Reeves felt the shift before he comprehended it. One moment he was strapped into the command chair reviewing telemetry. The next, the universe itself seemed to dissolve. No red standby lights. No faint hum of circulation fans. No glow of the consoles. Even the stars beyond the viewport had vanished, leaving only a blankness so complete that his eyes reported nothing at all. Power failure? Lieutenant Harris shouted from the navigation console, but his voice sounded distorted, as if muffled by dense liquid. Reeves unbuckled, pushing toward the control array. In microgravity, his body drifted easily, but there was no inertia. He felt as if his limbs met resistance not from the cabin air but from space itself thickening around them. He slammed his hand against the manual reset switch. Nothing. Not even the familiar click of the breaker. Then something stranger. His wrist chrono had stopped ticking. The second hand froze in mid-arc, unblinking, caught like an insect in amber. Dr. Evelyn Moore floated into the bridge, her hair drifting around her like pale seaweed. Her eyes were wide. "Captain, my med scanner isn't responding. The battery indicators show full charge but the screen's blank. Not dark. Blank. As if it doesn't exist." Reeves forced his breathing to slow. Panic here was worse than vacuum. He counted silently, 1, 2, 3, yet he had no sense of the numbers accumulating. He could not tell if seconds passed at all. And then, without warning, the stars returned. The overhead lights buzzed back into life, consoles flickered, and the low hum of life support resumed as though nothing had occurred. Reeves glanced at his chrono. It jumped ahead 17 minutes, skipping as if that interval had never happened. Everyone on the bridge blinked rapidly. In the sudden light, something seemed wrong with their faces. Harris rubbed his eyes, then froze. "Captain," he whispered. "Look at us." In the reflected sheen of the console screens, Reeves saw it. Each pupil shone faintly with an iridescent blue glow, like bioluminescent plankton caught in their retinas. Sudden klaxons rang out. The station's microthrusters fired without command, jolting the habitat ring. Reeves grabbed a handhold as loose equipment crashed into walls. The AI log scrolled an impossible error: external gravitational vector unregistered. The crew scrambled, strapping themselves in as the station lurched. Through the viewport, Earth swam back into focus, unchanged, serene. Yet Reeves felt something had held Artemis 7 in its grasp during those 17 minutes, some invisible turbulence of space itself. "Report." Reeves barked. Harris shouted back, "Orbit stable. No debris, no collision. But the trajectory shows deviation. For 17 minutes we weren't here." The bridge fell silent except for their ragged breathing. Then Dr. Moore's voice, thin and trembling. "Captain, I think something looked at us." The crew gathered in the medical bay, its white walls still humming faintly as if the station itself needed reassurance after the blackout. Dr. Evelyn Moore floated between them, her hands gloved, her tablet secured with Velcro against the bulkhead. Her movements were precise, but Reeves noticed her fingers trembled slightly when she reached for the retinal scanner. Lieutenant Harris went first. The beam swept across his face, and the screen displayed the results. Not normal corneal reflection but an active emission, faint pulses in the 480 to 490 nanometer range. His eyes weren't just reflecting light, they were producing it. "That's impossible," Harris muttered, blinking rapidly. The glow did not dim. Moore's jaw tightened. "Impossible by our standards. But it's consistent across all of you." She turned the scanner to herself, hesitated, and then triggered the sweep. The same result. Her pupils were miniature diodes of blue. Reeves pushed off the wall, drifting closer. "What about neural scans?" She nodded grimly, pulling up the readings. Their electroencephalograms showed patterns no human should generate, nested oscillations that spread evenly across hemispheres, as if the brain had reorganized into a symmetrical processor. "See this." She zoomed in on Reeves's chart. "Your delta waves are still there but layered with something else. Frequencies outside normal biology, stable and continuous. It's like another system running in parallel, as if our neurons are playing host." The captain studied the glowing faces of his crew. They didn't look ill. If anything, their gazes were sharper, almost predatory in focus. Side effects? Reeves asked. Moore hesitated. Enhanced cognitive bandwidth. You'll notice it soon. As if summoned by her words, Harris spoke up. Captain, I just ran orbital decay calculations in my head. Without a terminal. 30-digit precision. And it's correct. He stared at his own hands, horrified. I shouldn't be able to do that. A sharp alarm pierced the medical bay. Reeves pushed to the console, bracing himself against the wall. The station's environmental sensors were spiking. Oxygen fluctuation in habitat module B. Seal it, Reeves ordered. Harris shot down the corridor, his movements more efficient than usual, as though microgravity had become instinctive. He twisted the manual hatch before the pressure loss could escalate. The hiss of escaping atmosphere ceased. Back in the bay, Harris looked at Reeves. I saw the leak point before it registered. I just knew. Reeves felt the weight of Moore's stare. Captain, she said quietly, our biology has been rewritten. This isn't stress or hallucination. Something has made us more. Eves turned away from them, gripping a handhold. His mind returned to the blackout. The absolute silence, the absence of stars, the sensation of resistance in the void. He remembered Moore's words, something looked at us. If that were true, then the crew of Artemis 7 might not simply have survived an anomaly. They might be the product of contact. And contact rarely favored the weaker species. The bridge of Artemis 7 was a cathedral of light again, its displays flickering steadily across panels and HUDs. Yet for all the numbers scrolling before them, the most important value was missing. 17 minutes of data that simply did not exist. Lieutenant Harris worked feverishly at the analysis console. He routed external telescope logs, solar radiation monitors, even the micrometeoroid radar. Every instrument showed continuity before and after the blackout, except for the gap. During that span, the universe had been erased from their instruments. It's not a malfunction, Harris said, his voice flat. It's absence. The systems were active, but they recorded nothing. No background radiation, no cosmic microwave signature, no photon flux. It's as if the laws of physics ceased to operate. Dr. Moore hovered nearby, her eyes still luminous in the dim bridge lighting. Or as if we weren't in this universe. Reeves rubbed his temples. He didn't like her choice of words, but his gut agreed. The sensation during the blackout hadn't been of being disabled. It had been of displacement, as though Artemis 7 had drifted into a domain with no starlight, no entropy, no time. Captain, Harris continued, there's something else. He enlarged a diagnostic plot, jagged with noise. Look here, embedded in the null signal are structures. Not static, not random noise. Ordered. Sequences of primes recurring across multiple sensors. Like someone wanted to leave fingerprints in the silence. Moore leaned in, her pupils glowing brighter as she studied the data. It's a scaffold, she whispered. A mathematical scaffold. Not a message in words. A reconstruction grid. Whoever, or whatever, did this, it was rewriting us using mathematics as architecture. Suddenly the station shuddered. Bulkheads groaned and tools slipped free from Velcro anchors, tumbling through the cabin. The inertial stabilizers screamed with overload warnings. Impact. Reeves snapped. Harris scanned. Negative. No debris. No collision. The force vectors are coming from inside the hull. The sound grew, like massive hands pressing against the station's skin, a rhythmic thrum that rattled through the air ducts. The crew strapped in, eyes darting. Then from the forward viewport, a shimmer appeared. Not an object, an absence of one. A region of space where starlight bent unnaturally, as though pouring into a funnel no eye could follow. The void rippled, tugging at the station's orientation thrusters, pulling Artemis 7 closer. Reeves overrode the autopilot, firing retro thrusters. The ship groaned as it resisted. Sweat formed on his brow, floating into droplets that drifted like tiny planets. The shimmer collapsed suddenly. The vibration ceased. The bridge fell into silence once more, broken only by their ragged breaths. Dr. Moore's voice trembled. Captain, during the shimmer I saw something. Reeves turned. What? Her glowing eyes seemed to widen, reflecting the dim starlight. Figures. Not human. Not form exactly. They were possibilities layered on each other. They looked at me, Daniel. Not with eyes. With vectors. Reeves clenched the console rail. He remembered her earlier words. Something looked at us. But this time he didn't doubt her. Because deep in his mind, buried under reason and training, he had felt it too, a presence that pressed against the boundaries of thought itself. A gaze not of flesh but of geometry, A lattice intelligence that had reached into their neurons and rewritten them with prime numbers. And it wasn't finished. The blackout lasted only 17 minutes. The argument it unleashed on Earth would last for generations. From the vantage of Artemis 7, Earth looked unchanged. White storms swirling across blue oceans, continents shaded in greens and ochres. Yet below that placid surface, governments seethed. Transmission channels filled with coded directives, contradictory orders, and clipped, suspicious inquiries. NASA demanded immediate return. The European Space Agency insisted on quarantine. Beijing accused Washington of staging a cover-up. Moscow broadcast thinly veiled threats about orbital contagion. And still, none of the agencies could agree on what to call it. The event? The null interval? Or the term spreading virally across social media, the blue gaze. Reeves sat strapped to the command chair, listening as Earth's voices overlapped across encrypted channels. He thought of how they looked now, his crew. Their eyes, faintly glowing in the dim cabin, reflected like watchfires. They were proof, and proof was dangerous. Dr. Moore floated near the viewport, arms folded. "We're not going back," she said quietly. Reeves turned. "That's not your decision." Her gaze locked with his. For a moment he felt the pressure of something larger. Her stare carried weight, like a hand pressing against his mind. She looked away before he could decide whether it was imagination. "Daniel," she said softly, "if we land on Earth, panic alone will tear governments apart. We are infected, improved, rewritten, whatever word you prefer. The only thing uniting them right now is fear of us." An urgent ping rattled through the bridge. Harris swung his chair. "Captain, Earth Command just sent a remote override request." Reeves's jaw tightened. "For what system?" "The docking bay controls. They're locking us out of Earth orbit rendezvous. It's a block command. If we attempt descent, re-entry thrusters will not engage." "God damn it." Reeves slammed the console. The override code meant only one thing. Artemis 7 had been reclassified as a contaminated asset. Moore whispered, "Containment." Later, as the crew floated in uneasy silence, Reeves began to notice something odd, stray fragments of thought not his own. Sequences of numbers, expanding into lattice diagrams, filled his mind unbidden. They weren't hallucinations, they carried the clarity of revelation. Then he realized the others were seeing them too. Harris muttered numbers under his breath. Prime factors, geometries folding into tessellations. Dr. Moore drew invisible shapes on the wall with her fingertip, eyes unfocused, as if projecting inner visions outward. "Daniel," she said suddenly, voice sharp. "It's not random. It's a directive." Reeves's blood chilled. "Directive for what?" "To reconstruct something. A machine? A network?" "I can't," she broke off, gripping her temples. Her breathing grew ragged. Harris clutched his chest. "Captain, I can feel them. Whoever, whatever, pulled us into that interval, they're not gone. They're embedded. Looking through us." The next transmission confirmed their worst fears. The Multinational Tribunal on Orbital Affairs had convened an emergency session. The language was sterile, bureaucratic, but the meaning clear. Artemis 7 is to remain in orbit until further study. The crew is forbidden from re-entry to Earth atmosphere. Remote contingency measures are authorized should containment fail. Reeves read the message twice. Remote contingency. Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. Orbital destabilization. They could be burned from the sky with a single command. The captain finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "They don't trust us. They'll never trust us again." Moore turned her glowing eyes toward him, and for the first time since the blackout, she smiled. Not warmly. Almost pitying. Maybe they're right. The medical bay smelled faintly of antiseptic and metal, though in microgravity scents never clung long. Dr. Evelyn Moore anchored herself at the central workstation, strands of hair drifting about her face like pale silk. In front of her hovered a protein-folding simulation, one of the most complex problems in biology, usually requiring weeks of supercomputer time. She closed her eyes. Numbers formed behind her eyelids, a lattice of chemical bonds turning, flexing, snapping into place. Amino acids folded in fractal cascades, not step by step but all at once, as though her mind operated in parallel dimensions. When she reopened her eyes, the solution hung on the screen, completed before the machine had finished running its first algorithm. Harris stared. "That's impossible. Evelyn, you just predicted tertiary structures in seconds." She unhooked herself from the workstation and turned slowly in the air, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "No, Lieutenant. It wasn't prediction. It was memory. As if the answer already existed inside me, waiting to be unlocked. Their abilities didn't remain abstract for long. A sudden klaxon screamed. Bulkhead C reported a coolant breach, one that could cascade into the nuclear reactor if left unchecked. The crew jolted into motion. Harris shot down the corridor, moving faster than Reeves thought possible. In microgravity, speed often meant chaos, limbs flailing, collisions inevitable. But Harris moved like water, flowing through hatches, every push perfectly measured. By the time Reeves reached the junction, Harris had already located the breach. He didn't use instruments. He knew. His glowing eyes fixed on a panel, and before opening it he shouted, "Seal bypass valve 14B." Reeves obeyed, though his training told him the odds of Harris guessing right were nil. Yet as the valve snapped shut, the coolant flow stabilized. The danger evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. The crew exchanged looks of disbelief. None of them spoke the obvious. Harris had foreseen the failure before any alarm had registered. Later, in the exercise module, Moore tested another ability. She focused on a piece of scrap alloy drifting in 0G, a cracked bracket meant for disposal. Her eyes narrowed. The metal quivered. At first Reeves thought it was air currents. Then the bracket twisted, microscopic fractures aligning into a new pattern. Its crystalline structure reformed, stronger, smoother, as if atoms themselves had been persuaded to rearrange. The others recoiled, pressing against the walls. "That wasn't mechanical force," Harris whispered. "You altered matter." Moore exhaled sharply, her breath fogging. "Not altered. Corrected. Like restoring a corrupted file. The structure wanted to be complete. I only let it." Reeves floated silently, watching them. His crew, his people, were no longer his. Each day the transformations pulled them further from humanity. And then came the dreams. The station had always been full of reflections. Stainless steel bulkheads, polished instrument panels, even the dark gloss of the viewport glass. All surfaces where a face could flicker back at you in weightless silence. But now the reflections had multiplied. It began when Lieutenant Harris drifted past the comms array. He glanced at the polished surface of a diagnostic screen, and froze. "Captain?" His voice cracked. Reeves looked. At first he saw only Harris's pale face, eyes glowing faintly blue. Then he saw the second silhouette, taller, broader, its outline jagged as if built from shattered glass. It hovered inside Harris's reflection, not behind him. Reeves reached for him, but the reflection tilted its head. Not Harris. Something overlaid. Something watching through the veneer of light. The captain snapped. Everyone stepped back from reflective surfaces. "That's an order." But even as he barked the command, his own reflection shifted. The blue in his eyes deepened until the sockets glowed like nebulae, and another outline, angular, faceted, inhuman, layered itself atop his features. 2 days later, the ghosts no longer confined themselves to glass. During a routine EVA to inspect Solar Array D12, Harris reported that space itself seemed different, denser. The void was no longer empty but striated, as if invisible scaffolds stretched across the vacuum. He described filaments of light, faint and pulsing, running in geometric lines through nothingness. "Captain, it's like we're floating in a spider's web." Then the thruster malfunctioned. His tether spun him off course, drifting toward the void between panels. "Manual override. Now!" Reeves shouted, gripping the comm. But before Harris could react, something impossible happened. The filaments bent. Lines of light rearranged themselves, pulling Harris back along a vector no human eye should have perceived. His trajectory shifted as though guided by unseen rails, returning him safely to the hull. The captain's blood ran cold. It wasn't Harris who had corrected the drift. It was the ghost. Inside Artemis 7, anomalies escalated. Objects refused to stay put. Tools strapped to the wall would rotate slowly, aligning along invisible axes. Air currents began flowing in repeating loops, as though the station itself had been folded into a new geometry. Even sound warped. Footsteps in one module echoed in another seconds later, dislocated in time. Dr. Moore whispered, "It's colonization. They're mapping themselves onto our environment, the way they map themselves onto us." Reeves snapped, "Colonization implies we're still in control. Look around. We're not." That night cycle, alarms blared. Module F depressurized without cause, the hull sensors reporting no breach. The crew rushed to seal it off, their glowing eyes darting like wild animals in the dark. Then came the sound, a sharp rending like tearing metal, but from inside the sealed module. Through the viewport they glimpsed it, a form rising out of empty air. Not solid. Not liquid. A framework of intersecting planes, shifting like glass plates rearranging themselves in higher order. Each intersection glowed blue, pulsing in rhythm with their own eyes. Harris raised a wrench instinctively, his hands trembling. The figure tilted. The air rippled outward, smashing tools from racks, cracking bulkheads. The crew clung to rails as the module shook violently, warning lights screaming red. Reeves shouted, "Seal it. Now." The hatch slammed shut, emergency clamps locking. The vibrations cut off instantly. Silence returned, but the silence was worse. It pressed against them like the weight of an ocean. Moore's face was pale, her glowing eyes wide. "Captain, they're no longer content with shadows." Reeves gripped the handrail so tightly his knuckles went white. For the first time since the blackout, he admitted the truth to himself. The ghosts weren't visitors. They were residents. The tribunal's decision arrived coded in triple encryption, but its meaning was unmistakable. Effective immediately, Station Artemis 7 is under full quarantine. Re-entry is forbidden. The crew is to remain in orbit until further notice. Contingency termination protocols remain authorized. Reeves read it aloud on the bridge. The words were flat, clinical, devoid of humanity. Yet every syllable throbbed with condemnation. "Containment," Harris muttered. "They're going to keep us up here until we rot." Moore floated nearby, eyes glowing faintly brighter in the low light. "No," she said softly. "Not until we rot. Until we finish changing." On the comm feeds, they glimpsed fragments of Earth's panic. Families of the crew protested outside government buildings. News anchors speculated that the glowing eyes marked a mutation, or a weapon. One commentator whispered that Artemis 7 was no longer human at all, but a probe for something else. Reeves cut the feeds. The weight of Earth's fear pressed heavier than gravity. That night cycle, the real terror began. Reeves drifted in his cabin, eyes closed. He heard a knock at the hatch in Moore's voice. "Daniel, wake up. We need to talk about the directives." He opened his eyes. The cabin was empty. The chrono read 1:14. No one had been there. Hours later, when Moore actually knocked on his hatch, she spoke the exact same words. Her tone, her inflection, identical. Reeves froze. "I've already lived this." Moore's glowing eyes searched his face. "So have I." On the bridge, the dislocation spread. Harris argued with Reeves about recalibrating the comms array, except halfway through, Reeves realized they were repeating a conversation they had already had. Harris even gave the same half-smile at the same moment. The second time, Reeves interrupted him mid-sentence. "You're about to say we should reroute power through the thermal coupler," Reeves said flatly. Harris's mouth closed. His pupils glowed brighter. "Then you're about to tell me it's too risky. And then I'll insist it's the only way." Both men fell silent, the lines of the script already written into their minds. Moore floated into the module, her voice taut. "It's not déjà vu. It's interference. The ghosts aren't just altering space, they're altering causality. We're bleeding across timelines, caught between what already happened and what's still possible." Reeves gripped the console, knuckles white. "And what happens when the timelines don't agree?" The station answered for them. A wrench floated past, clattering against the wall. Then, impossibly, the same wrench clattered again in the same place a heartbeat later. Two identical tools drifted together, merging into one with a sound like grinding glass. Harris recoiled. "They're folding time like they folded us." The next transmission cut through the air like a blade. The tribunal spokesperson, voice iron cold, announced, "Artemis 7 is to be considered an extraterrestrial vector. If containment is breached, termination will proceed." The channel snapped off. Reeves looked at his crew, their glowing eyes, their faces half-lit by the dying console light. For the first time he realized Earth wasn't wrong. Maybe they were already less human than the thing that had taken them. The station creaked as if under strain from an invisible tide. Bolts popped in the bulkheads. Screens flickered with static, then bled into fractured images of the crew themselves, walking, speaking, seconds before they actually did. Reeves watched a monitor that showed Harris reaching for the emergency panel. On screen, Harris's hand pressed the switch. In real life, Harris had not yet moved. "Don't touch it," Reeves barked. Harris froze. His hand hovered just short of where the screen claimed it had already gone. He swallowed hard. "It's showing us the future." Moore floated near the tool rack. A spanner drifted loose. Without touching it, she extended her hand. The metal twisted in midair, writhing as though softened like clay. It stretched into a thin rod, bent itself into a perfect ring, then snapped back into rigidity. The others stared. Moore's glowing eyes burned brighter, unblinking. "It's not just foresight," she whispered. "We're learning how to shape matter. The station is teaching us. Or, something inside it is." Reeves grabbed her arm. "No. That's not learning, that's infection." Moore's voice dropped to a near growl. "And what if the infection is survival?" The station jolted violently, alarms wailing. A Russian satellite, tumbling uncontrolled, had drifted into their orbital lane. Impact in less than 60 seconds. Reeves shouted, "Fire thrusters, emergency avoidance." But the navigation console spat only static. Systems unresponsive. The satellite grew in the viewport, a jagged, spinning mass of metal. Impact was inevitable. Then Harris's voice rang out, "Wait. Don't move." He held out both hands, trembling. The glow in his eyes surged like molten fire. The satellite shuddered in space, then stopped dead 50 meters from the hull. It hung there, spinning slower, until it drifted harmlessly away, nudged by an unseen tide. The crew's breaths filled the silence. Reeves whispered, "You moved a 30-ton satellite with your mind." Harris's face was ashen. "Not my mind. Something else using me." The tribunal wasted no time. A coded message came across the channel, shaky with urgency. "Uncontrolled gravitational interference detected from Artemis 7. Station is confirmed hostile. If orbital deviation continues, orbital strike protocols will be initiated." Reeves slammed a fist into the console. "They're going to kill us." Moore floated closer, her ring of bent metal gleaming. "They can try." That night cycle, the crew experienced a shared vision. Not a dream, more like a broadcast bleeding directly into their minds. They stood on a vast plain of liquid glass, under skies filled with fractal light. Shapes rose from the horizon, towering, translucent beings with limbs like rivers of quicksilver. They moved not in steps but in unfolding geometries. A voice, or perhaps a pattern, echoed within their skulls. "You are the vessels. Through you the earth will be opened." Reeves woke gasping, sweat soaking his collar. Harris was already awake, staring into the dark. "They're not asking," Harris whispered. "They're telling." The crew gathered in the observation bay, silent, staring down at Earth's glowing curve. Reeves's hands trembled as he clenched the railing. "We can't let them use us. If Earth destroys us, maybe it's mercy." Moore's glowing eyes fixed on the planet below, unblinking. "And if what's inside us is the future? Then mercy is treason." The lights in the station pulsed once, synchronous with their heartbeats. The entity inside was no longer content to whisper. It was beginning to take command. The order came at dawn cycle. No encrypted pleasantries, no committee vote, just one line of text across the comms. "Orbital strike authorized. Execution in T-600 seconds." Reeves read it aloud. The words hung in the air like a sentence from a higher court, absolute, inescapable. Moore floated to the viewport. Her glowing eyes reflected Earth's curve, serene and unknowing below. "They're going to erase us," she said. "Like scraping mold off bread." Harris's fists clenched. "Let them try." On the tactical screens, 6 autonomous kill satellites maneuvered into position. Sleek, black darts carrying tungsten rods, kinetic spears designed to strike from orbit with the force of small nukes. Reeves knew their reputation. No atmosphere, no blast, no fallout. Just raw, focused devastation. "Impact in 9 minutes," he said hoarsely. Moore turned to Harris, her voice steady. "We can stop them. We've already moved a satellite. We can move these." Reeves shouted, "If you fight back, you prove them right. You make us the enemy." Moore's gaze sharpened. "Daniel, don't you see? We are the enemy. Or their weapon. Or their children. Whatever this is, Earth won't accept us alive." At T-300 seconds, the first rod detached, glowing with atmospheric friction as it hurtled downwards. It wasn't aimed at Artemis 7, it was a test shot plunging into the Pacific. The shockwave bloomed across the ocean, a blossom of white vapor visible even from orbit. The tribunal was sending a message, "We're serious." The entity inside them surged. Reeves felt his skull vibrate as though filled with static. Moore gasped, eyes blazing like twin beacons. Harris's arms spread wide, trembling as invisible currents swept through the station. The kill satellites shifted. Not by thrusters, by force. Their orbits twisted, spiraled into unnatural curves. One turned nose first toward another and smashed it to molten debris. The fragments reassembled mid-flight, fusing into a single jagged spear that hovered, impossibly in defiance of physics. Reeves clutched the railing, his stomach lurching. God no. It's not us, it's them using us. Moore didn't answer. She was too busy breathing in rhythm with the pulsing lights that now ran through every corridor of the station. Ground control flooded the comms with panicked orders. Artemis 7, stand down. You are in violation of planetary security. Further aggression will trigger global defense protocols. Harris laughed, a harsh, alien laugh that wasn't fully his own. What defense? We are the defense now. He thrust his hand toward the viewport. The jagged spear of debris aligned perfectly with Earth. Reeves launched himself across the cabin, tackling Harris. The two men collided, bodies slamming into the wall. Harris fought like a man possessed, stronger than he had ever been. His glowing eyes burned straight through Reeves's soul. Moore shouted, "Stop. You're only delaying the inevitable." Reeves pinned Harris against the console, his breath ragged. "We're not gods. We're not soldiers. We're human. We have to stay human." For a moment Harris faltered. His glow flickered. But then the station itself roared. Metal shrieked, lights flared, and the entity surged through every circuit like fire in a dry forest. The spear of debris launched downward. On Earth, defense satellites responded instantly. Directed energy weapons fired beams of pure plasma into the incoming strike. The spear shattered, raining fragments into the upper atmosphere. But each fragment bent itself mid-fall, twisting, coalescing into dozens of smaller darts, like a swarm of metallic locusts, still streaking toward Earth. Reeves stared in horror. "They're learning to multiply." Moore whispered, voice reverent, "No. They're learning to seed." The countdown clock hit 0. The tribunal unleashed the remaining 5 tungsten rods, all aimed at Artemis 7. The crew braced for annihilation. Yet in that instant the rods froze in space, suspended around the station like statues. The entity's voice filled their skulls as one. "Through you the Earth is opened." The rods rotated, not toward the station but toward the planet below. The tribunal had lost control. The rods hung frozen in orbit, a crown of weapons around Artemis 7. Below, Earth glittered, fragile, blue and utterly vulnerable. Reeves floated at the viewport, chest heaving. Harris hovered beside him, sweat streaming down his face though the cabin was cold. Moore's glowing eyes blazed brighter than the station lights. "They can't stop it now," she whispered. "We've already become the bridge." Reeves clenched the railing until his knuckles bled. "No. We can still stop this. We have to choose for ourselves." On the comms, a live broadcast appeared. The tribunal itself, patched in from Geneva. Rows of grim-faced officials filled the screen, their voices overlapping in translation, all strained with fear. "Artemis 7, this is your final transmission. The entity has compromised your bodies, your station, your orbit. Humanity cannot coexist with it. You must be destroyed." An older delegate leaned forward, voice cracking. "Or, if there is still reason left in you, contain it. Reject it. Choose humanity." Moore laughed bitterly. "They ask us to choose while they aim the guns." Harris snapped suddenly, lunging toward the control deck. He seized the comm array, his voice booming with unnatural resonance. "Earth, you don't understand. This is not an invasion, it's an evolution. You fear it because you see it as foreign. But you are blind. We are Earth's children. This is what comes next." Reeves tore him away, fists flying. The two men grappled in zero gravity, slamming into bulkheads, wrenching cables loose. Sparks spat across the cabin. Moore shouted, "Stop it. The more you fight, the more it feeds." But neither listened. Blood droplets spun in the air, glinting like red stars. The rods around the station rotated in unison, their metallic skins rippling with strange fractal patterns. Then a voice, not human, not even sound, but an imprint across every neuron, spoke through them all. "Life must either adapt or perish. Humanity has voted. Now you will decide." The choice was clear: submit and let the aliens seed Earth, or destroy Artemis 7 with themselves inside, severing the bridge. The tribunal's chairwoman leaned close to her mic, her voice raw. "Reeves, Captain, you have command. If you still stand with humanity, cut power, scuttle the station. We'll guide the rods down on your position. End this before Earth is lost." Moore's glow brightened until her eyes were white fire. "They fear birth more than death. Daniel, don't betray what we're becoming." Harris rasped, blood on his lips. "Let it in. The Earth below is theirs as much as ours. Don't be the last wall against the future." Reeves stared at them both, two comrades, two enemies, two faces of the same transformation. He floated to the core console, trembling. The scuttle code blinked at him in red, a simple command that would overload the reactor and make Artemis 7 a sunburst in orbit. His finger hovered. Moore lunged to stop him, but Reeves slammed the enter key. Warning klaxon screamed. Self-destruct. T-120 seconds. Moore howled in fury, her voice breaking into alien static. Harris grabbed Reeves, trying to pull him back, but Reeves shoved him off. "We are still human," Reeves said through clenched teeth. "And humans choose their own ending." The rods aligned, preparing to strike. The tribunal whispered prayers, curses, orders across the comms. Then Artemis 7 detonated. A blossom of white fire lit the heavens, brighter than the moon. The rods vaporized in the inferno. The station's fragments spiraled downward in a glittering rain, burning to ash in the atmosphere. For a moment, Earth was safe. In the silence that followed, the tribunal breathed relief. Reporters hailed Reeves as the man who had saved the planet. Humanity congratulated itself for its survival. But above the Pacific, where the test strike had first touched water, the ocean glowed faintly blue. Not with fire. With eyes. The tribunal strike had failed. Artemis 7, shorn and burning, drifted like a shattered reliquary in orbit. The alien force, no longer hiding behind the crew's flesh, had revealed itself in pulses of geometry and fields of impossible matter. Reeves had chosen annihilation, ejecting the remaining cores into self-destruct, consuming the station in silence so vast it seemed to choke the stars themselves. On Earth, billions watched a plume of molten debris cut across the sky like a false dawn. Cities erupted in cheers, relief, tears. Commentators filled the airwaves. Humanity had won. The infection had been purged. But deep inside, none of them believed it was finished. The tribunal met in Geneva 2 days later. 10 nations' delegates sat in silence as final testimony was read. The crew of Artemis 7 demonstrated intelligence not their own, and abilities no human physiology should sustain. Though the station is destroyed, the unknown force remains unaccounted for. Final recommendation: quarantines continue. Surveillance widened. History will mark this verdict as necessary for human survival. The gavel fell. The decision was sealed. Humanity chose fear and by choosing it, believed itself safe. But safety was a myth. On a village shore in the Philippines, a fisherman rowed out into the starlit sea. His oar touched black glassy water and he stopped. The stars below him did not match those above. They pulsed, expanding outward in waves as if the ocean itself had lungs. Then he saw them. Countless blue eyes, glowing deep beneath the surface, gazing upward. They blinked once, synchronously. His breath failed him. The lantern at the prow tipped into the sea. Instead of extinguishing, its flame brightened, carried downward, swallowed into the luminous gaze as if welcomed. In the North Pacific, a nuclear submarine detected irregular sonar pulses. Rhythmic, vast, intelligent. At first they sounded like tectonic echoes. Then they accelerated into the cadence of a heartbeat. The sonar array filled with an outline too large to belong to any whale, arched, translucent, continent-sized. A living architecture rising beneath the ocean. Before the captain could order a retreat, the array began broadcasting on its own. Voices bled from the speakers. Some belonged to his own crew, speaking words they had never uttered. Others were voices of the dead, Reeves, Harris, Moore, whispering fragments of alien equations and human regrets. The crew froze. The captain ordered silence, but even silence could not stop the ocean from answering. Weeks later, a confidential report reached Geneva. Subject: bioluminescent activity in the Pacific. Patterns consistent with Artemis 7 phenomenon. Recommend full secrecy to prevent mass panic. The delegates whispered, their faces pale. The chairwoman turned toward the Rhone outside the chamber windows. The river gleamed under moonlight, and for an instant she imagined it glowing blue. She did not speak her fear aloud. A secure satellite feed transmitted one last image, the Pacific shimmering faintly in the night. Not a flare. Not a storm. Billions of them. Blinking in time with Earth's tides. And so the verdict humanity had delivered was not an ending at all, but a prologue.